All right, thank you everybody so much for joining today. My name is Erica, and I'm here with the Priority Matrix. So I'll go ahead and turn my camera on just for, the first couple minutes here to kind of introduce myself and tell you guys what to expect for the next, 30 to 40 minutes, kind of depending on how many questions we do have at the end. But again, thank you all so much for joining me today. I wasn't really sure what to expect with a lot of people already out of the office for the holidays and it also being a super busy time for those of you who are still kind of wrapping things up for the year. So I really appreciate your time. This session is being recorded and it will be emailed out to all of you, shortly after the webinar ends. I also do want to let all of you know that as we kind of go through the webinar today, feel free to either drop your questions in the chat box and I will review those and answer them at the end of the meeting. Alternatively, you can kind of jot them down, just remember those questions. And at the end, I'm actually going to be able to take you guys off mute and we can talk about those questions, make sure we get all of them answered. So I would say, you can probably budget again about 30 to 40 minutes for this webinar. It's probably not going to take the whole hour-long session unless we get tons of great questions at the end. But historically, it's taken, no more than 45 minutes or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to kill my camera for now. It can get a little bit glitchy when I have everything going at the same time. I definitely don't want that to happen. Also, I want to let you guys know if at any point you're not able to hear me for some reason or, you think you're not seeing the right screen, definitely possible. Sometimes it can get, a little bit messy with so many screens. I think it should be okay, but I would love if you guys can all just kind of give me a heads up if, something seems to be off track. With all that being said, I think we can go ahead and get started. Again, I really appreciate your time today, and I hope that at the end of this webinar, you all have some really good takeaways. So as you all know, the kind of overall idea for this webinar is helping team managers succeed with Priority Matrix for Microsoft Teams. So based off of the registration, it looked like, the majority of you all today are in some type of leadership position in your organization. And that's actually perfect. So I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different managers, executives, and leaders in all sorts of different types of companies. And I found that Priority Matrix can, pretty much support them in very similar ways. And so that's what we will be focusing on today. A quick kind of review of what the agenda is, just so you all know what to expect for today. I'm going to help you all understand just kind of generally what is Priority Matrix, give you a brief overview of how I like to categorize the software. I'm going to help us look at common challenges that leaders face who don't use Priority Matrix. Again, I've been with this company for just over 5 years now. So you can imagine that I've had the opportunity to, luckily talk to a lot of our first time users with Priority Matrix and, kind of organize all of the challenges that are faced by different roles. So we'll take a look at that today. I'm going to show you really quickly how I think Priority Matrix can help with these challenges. We're going to look at how you can actually get started with downloading the application. And then to kind of tie it all together, we're going to take all of these talking points. I'm actually going to show it to you in a demo. And then as mentioned, we'll save plenty of time for the Q&A at the end. So what is Priority Matrix? You can kind of categorize Priority Matrix as a project and task management software. And as you can tell, I say that with a little bit of hesitation because I really don't think that title really gives Priority Matrix all of the glory that it deserves, because we are not just a project and task management software. Of course, we do support that very heavily, but Priority Matrix also supports email management. We have a couple meeting support features specifically designed to use through Microsoft Teams. We've helped organizations automate their processes with email and ticket management, and so much more. So these are just kind of the high level things that, I help customers with and we're really able to tackle on, a pretty easy basis because that's what we've been designed to do. But as a takeaway, you could call us a project and task management software. And I'm going to, again, break down all of these talking points when we actually dive in and look at the live demo here. So, what are some common challenges for managers who don't use Priority Matrix? Again, I feel so honored that I get to pretty much talk to all of our brand new and long-term customers with Priority Matrix. And with that being said, I've definitely seen similar challenges that managers face who aren't currently using Priority Matrix. And I'm sure a lot of you can actually relate to the challenges that I have listed here on the screen. And I want you to know, again, you're not alone. These are really common problems, and we are actually able to help you overcome these. So the first one would be communicating across multiple platforms. What I mean by that is emails, scheduling meetings, using Teams, Excel documents, Word documents. People have a whole major combination of different ways they like to communicate, and it can be challenging when that's dropped across multiple platforms. And that takes me to the next point is there's no central place to easily get updates. When there's so many different places that you're communicating and working together, when it comes to actually just simply seeing everything in one place, all of your updates, all of your to-dos, everything your team is working on, it can really be challenging to get that when you don't just have that central system to do it all. On top of all that, as a team manager who's overseeing a group of people trying to get their status updates, those team managers, commonly have direct reports and executives that they actually have to report to as well, most likely on those project level updates. And that can be equally as challenging if there's not, kind of an established system where you're able to share those updates. Lastly, as you can kind of see, the theme here is communication. We want to help you do all of this communicating and status updates in just one place. And that also touches on the topic of working with stakeholders, external collaborators, those people who are not in your company, who you're likely just emailing. But as we all know, emailing causes challenges in itself. It's not a super effective way to share updates and work together. So I'm also going to be able to show you how Priority Matrix actually lets you work with your stakeholders as well. So to kind of touch on that again, how can Priority Matrix help with those challenges we just looked at? One of our biggest goals for our users is to create one central place for all status updates. As a manager, this is honestly a lifesaver when you can rest assured that you only need to check one place to get all of the updates that you need to see. On top of that, as I kind of just briefly mentioned, you're going to be able to use Priority Matrix across all levels of the organization. Anybody who's willing to get in there and use it with you, you can use it across teams, across different roles. There's not going to be any barriers that you face there. Priority Matrix also helps with meeting management. Like I mentioned, it's going to automatically create meeting agendas for you and also automatically send you email follow-ups highlighting all of the action items and all of the progress updates shared within that meeting through Priority Matrix. To kind of wrap all of this up, the goal is to help people improve communication so managers can, get more done and see those updates that they need to see, all while sending less emails. We want to help you work together through Priority Matrix and spend less time digging through that inbox. So how can we actually get started? Priority Matrix is a multi-platform application which will allow you to download the desktop application for Mac and Windows. We also do have a mobile app for you. You can use the web application at prioritymatrix.com, whether you want to use that on your desktop or you'd like to use that on your mobile device, works great in both places. And we also have Office 365 integrations, such as Microsoft Teams, Outlook 365, Planner. Today, we're going to look really heavily at how Priority Matrix works within Teams, but happy to answer any questions you might have about the other branches of integrations. And lastly, I think it's really important to understand that these are going to automatically sync across platforms. So for me, I use Priority Matrix through Teams. I really like the web app, and I'm definitely using it on my phone. Those are all syncing automatically. I don't have to make duplicate updates or force a sync. It's going to be updating no matter what, so you don't have to worry about, any unalignment across the platforms that you use it on. All right, so I know for a lot of you today, you came to this webinar to actually see the priority matrix demo. So hopefully you have kind of a pretty good feel of what we're going to be looking at. And let's dive in and actually take a look at priority matrix within Teams. All right, so what we're looking at here, and again, hopefully you guys are all able to hear me okay. You can see the right screen, and please, as we go through this, be sure to jot down those questions or drop them in the chat box. I love to hear your thoughts and make sure we can get any questions kind of resolved. So what we're looking at here, this is my priority matrix running directly through Microsoft Teams. You can see I still have all the Teams things over here on the left-hand side. And then at the bottom, we've got priority matrix added. Once you install PM, I like to suggest you pin it open because then it's always going to stay there and be super easily accessible for you. So, one of the biggest things, which I've kind of touched on in the first couple of minutes of introduction here, is that for managers, one of the most powerful things you can do is get everything into just one place. And for those organizations who are already using the Office suite and Microsoft Teams really heavily, you might as well keep Teams as that central location, but add priority matrix on top of that to provide more structure and a more organized way to share project updates and communicate. So looking at priority matrix through the lens of a manager, keeping in mind all of those common challenges that, we pretty much can resonate with all of us on this call, especially those who are leaders in different organizations. Looking at kind of the general layout of priority matrix here, everybody who's on the priority matrix license will be able to create different projects and also share those with their managers and their teammates. So what happens when you create a project and you share that with your teammates and management is you're basically drawing everybody in and you're saying, hey, here's where we're going to be sharing our priorities and here's where we're going to be getting those status updates. So you can immediately cut back on emails, cut back on meetings, and pretty much throw out all those Excel spreadsheets and any other, kind of makeshift way for sharing updates. In kind of the main screen here, you can see all these little pictures off to the right-hand side. That represents who has access to these projects and who I've shared it with. So opening up one of the priority matrix projects. For a manager and for their teammates, this is where you can really dive in and you can say, here's our top priorities, here's everything we're working on, and you can actually delegate those tasks out to your teammates, letting them know, hey, this is your responsibility again, and this is where I'd like to see those project and task updates from you. A couple things I like to point out. So I've kind of set up a couple examples here in kind of the mindset of working for a construction company, a manager who's using this working in construction. I go with that path because I've worked with so many different project managers in construction that I felt like, hopefully I could put together a couple reasonable examples. I'm sure they won't be perfect, but you can kind of keep that mindset as we work through these examples. With that being said, on the right-hand side, I want you to know that you can actually rename these quadrants. So I've set this up to kind of represent different phases in this planning process, but a lot of people actually, more typically use the quadrants for prioritizing how important their tasks are going to be. So again, your team will put all these action items into this project, and then you're able to actually go in, and on the right-hand side, you can see all of these item details. So I've actually gone ahead and I've assigned this task to one of my teammates. We've established a start and an end date, and I'm actually able to communicate with him right here. So now I can say, hey, Pablo, how's this going? He's actually going to be notified that I added this comment. And maybe I can say, remind Pablo in 1 hour. Now we have our reminder set. And as a manager, I can rest assured that he is going to see this. He's going to get a couple notifications, and I don't have to continuously check my inbox for these updates. With that being said, anybody else in this project is also going to be able to see these status updates. So if there is a manager above me, an executive, or a director and they want to be in on these task level updates, they're able to see this as long as I've simply shared this project with them. So right off the bat, we're given visibility to everybody who needs to be included in the steps that we're going through in this project. I like to point out that if there's several people who you would like to get notified about the changes happening on an item level, you can simply add them as a follower, and that's saying, hey, we'd like you to see the updates that are happening. You're linking them into this item, and they're going to get all of those notifications through the home view. I will definitely touch on that more in just a minute. So again, just to kind of really harp on this from a management perspective, I know a lot of people are typically sending all this information through emails or even sending it through a chat in a channel. And the problem with that is, number one, you can't set reminders. You're not easily able to set your due dates and have that show up in a calendar and a Gantt chart, which I'm about to show you. And there's also no way to effectively share files or link it to any type of external resource without kind of just shoving it all into an email. So we've set this up in a really organized way for management to kind of display this and also really easily receive those updates as they come through from their teammates. You're able to update the progress as you kind of work through this. Again, just letting people know generally where you're at with this task. I did mention that we do have a calendar within each project, so you're able to see that here. And then most importantly, I want you all to understand that all of this information you put into the project level is automatically generating this Gantt chart for you, which in the past has actually been compared to the Gantt chart that you get through Microsoft Project. I've heard that the pricing for Project is pretty outrageous. I don't know it firsthand, but at the end, we'll talk about some of the licensing options for Priority Matrix, and hopefully it's kind of in alignment with what your budget looks like. But basically what happens with this Gantt chart, to get back on track here, is you're now able to see from, I believe what my manager called it was a 10,000 level perspective, way up high, that bird's eye view, looking down on the duration of all these action items. And I'm really excited to tell you all that we now do support dependencies. So, and I believe this is coming from quadrant 2 here, the second phase of this project, they all are related very closely. So if this task is bumped back, everything else is going to be pretty drastically affected. You can tell actually bumping this entire project back several months if we keep delaying any of these steps. This makes it really easy for managers to kind of see barriers before they happen and make sure everything can be on track, even if step 1, step 2, or step 3 becomes delayed. All right, so this project in this example here is looking very specifically at a specific project, which, typically a team manager is the owning a handful of these projects. What I've come to understand is that for those team managers, their directors and their, executives and direct reports are absolutely going to be looking for updates as these projects progress. But typically the, high level management and leaders, they don't necessarily have time to go in and look through each and every task. So most likely they're looking for more of a dashboard view to see those project level updates. So if we look right here, leadership dashboard for project property Y, again, using this example of construction project management, when I open this up, we like to call this the dashboard because you can recognize actually these project names here. Planning phase 1 through 3 is the project we were just looking at. But now we can share this project with the manager's direct reports. And we can say, hey, here's the duration of this entire project. And here are the weekly project updates for this project. So now we're actually really easily able to track the projects at a super high level without expecting the directors to get kind of nitty gritty and look through each task and gather their own updates. We can share the project level updates right here, really easily able to communicate with the manager's direct reports. And you still have all the options to view it in a calendar, Gantt chart, however you want to see this data. If for some reason the direct report or the executive of the team manager was like, hey, I do have some extra bandwidth today and I would like to be able to get in and actually see what's happening, they can simply click on this link. And as long as you've simply shared that project with them, they are now able to get in and see all of the specific changes and tasks that we've been working on. So I see managers typically setting up several dashboard projects for their direct reports, representing, again, all the smaller projects that they're overseeing, just to kind of wrap it all up and say, hey, here's the high level project updates that you need to be aware of. I want to pause here, give you guys a second to drop your questions in the chat. I would say there's probably about 5 or 10 more minutes of things that I would like to show you, and then we can pause and definitely go over any of those questions. But just a quick reminder, be sure to jot those down because I would love to hear those at the end. All right, so the next question we typically get is, okay, this is all great, but as a manager, when I would like to see all of the task or project level updates, I don't have time to go into each and every project and gather those up. So what you can do is jump to the search view, and what we have here is actually all of the projects that you're part of, all of the tasks that are in those projects. This is really nice if you're really looking for just kind of a summed up view of everything, but more popular and I guess more commonly used is to apply a couple filters. In this case, you may want to see only your action items that you need to work on, or alternatively, you might want to see only the action items that a teammate is working on. So we'll use Pablo as this example again. Now I can see every single task that this specific person is responsible for. Really easy to see the upcoming due dates, the progress report that hopefully they've kind of been updating periodically. So now if something is slipping through the cracks, for example, this task that is due yesterday hasn't been modified in the last week, from a manager's perspective, this is probably a really big red flag. We can say, this is going to be due in 2 hours to review in our one-on-one meeting. We've updated that now, and then we'll say, we'll leave progress at 0 because we're not quite sure where it's at. This leads me to, and it's a very nice transition into actually the one-on-one view, which is specifically designed falling under the meeting support category to help you actually have better and more effective one-on-one meetings. So what happens here again is using Pablo for the example. I'm able to choose anybody that is using Priority Matrix with me, and I'm able to see it's not simply all of the action items that they're working on, but it's zoomed in, and the system is saying, here are your shared priorities with this person. Either they are the owner and I'm listed as a follower, or vice versa. Maybe they created the task and delegated it to me. So it's really anything that's relevant for the two of us. So we can very quickly zoom through these meetings, talk about everything that's important between the two of us. Here's that example where I just updated the due date. It has now been brought to my attention. Again, things are not going to slip through the cracks at this point. And it makes it really easy to have short and effective meetings. You can also add shared tasks during this meeting. So let's just say closing up office for the holidays. I know for me, this is at the top of my mind. I'm sure a lot of you are looking forward to this as well. We'll say this is going to be due Friday at 9 a.m. We can prioritize it into the correct project. We'll say schedule changes, and we hit add. Again, just as one more example, we're going to see that this task is now added to our shared priority list. Again, nothing slipping through the cracks, and we're really easily able to track these new action items that come up during meetings. A little bit more at the bottom here, not only are we seeing our shared priorities, but our engineers have done such an amazing job with this integration. We're actually able to see any email that's been exchanged between the two of us, any meeting that we're both included in, and any file that is either shared through Priority Matrix or in SharePoint, because we do upload your files to your SharePoint automatically to again, keep everything in just one place for you. Two more things I want to show you all, and then we can do questions. I like to highlight the My Team tab because this is a perfect for a manager if they're thinking, hey, where are my teammates spending their time? What projects are they working in? What tasks are they working on? This is showing you recently modified items by each and every person on your team. At the start of this meeting, during the kind of introduction phase, I mentioned that Priority Matrix also supports communication with external stakeholders. That is such a massive use case these days that I couldn't possibly leave that out of this webinar. So let's get right to it. For those of you who are using Microsoft Teams with your stakeholders, whether it's a contractor or the person whose property you're building out for them, of course, they want to see these updates. And just as ineffective as emailing is with your teammates, it's also proven to not be great as a communication form to work with your stakeholders and external collaborators as well. So what you're able to actually do is if you're using Teams with those external stakeholders, you can either share a project with them through a channel, or you can actually share it through a chat if you have more of a personal conversation happening with them through Teams. You can say, hey, here's the projects we're working on. In this case, they would actually be able to edit this and collaborate with you. They could comment, they could share updates, ask questions. This is a fully collaborative view for you and your stakeholders to work in. If it's a little bit more reserved and you're like, hey, I don't really want them to edit my priority matrix projects, but I do want them to see the timeline that we're working on and all of these updates. You can actually share a project in a read-only mode. Here, they're not going to be able to make any changes. They can't click on any of this, but they are able to see the timeline. They can still view it in the Gantt chart. It's a really great way to pass on information without, giving them access to actually modify your projects. Again, you can do this through a chat, exactly the same through a channel. Another big question that comes up would be, well, what if we're not using Teams with our stakeholders? No problem. We've definitely thought about that. And what you can do is simply open up a project and you're going to get, let's see, copy project link in read-only mode or share project in read-only mode. You would copy this, send that to them in an email, say, hey, here's a project we're working on for you. They can open it up in a browser and view it that way. Last but definitely not least, I can't wrap up this webinar without at least mentioning the Outlook integration. Hopefully, if you're using Priority Matrix with your teammates, your direct reports, and your external stakeholders, you're going to be spending a lot less time looking for emails and reading emails. But, emails are deeply engraved in our, workflow. They're not going to go away, which is fine. And that's why we've created this Outlook integration to say, hey, when you do get these important emails, let's help you prioritize them into a project, set a due date. So when we do look at the agenda view in Priority Matrix, we're not going to be forgetting about the emails that are actually really important for us. So again, very quickly on the right-hand side, you can super easily choose the project where you need to prioritize this email. You can pick a due date, and when we hit create action item, we'll go back to Teams. In just a minute, we're actually going to see this email jump into this project since I already had it opened. Really great example here. This is the email that I just prioritized. In the notes, you see the whole body of the email. So this becomes a really great way to actually share this information with your teammates. And most importantly, when we view our agenda through Priority Matrix, we're now able to see all of our tasks that need to get done, meetings. So here's a meeting we're on right here together, and also prioritized emails. So we can really get everything on our to-do list in one place, and also status updates from our teammates in one central location. So hopefully you all were able to track this. And I appreciate everybody who stuck around to the end. I know that's a lot to take in. So I'm going to jump back to my presentation here. Really quickly, a couple key takeaways that I want to make sure everybody was able to get from this presentation. Priority Matrix is going to give you immediate visibility. Managers, directors, teammates, whenever your coworker shares an update, you can immediately see that without having to pester for emails and dig through your inbox looking for those. Direct reports can see updates when needed through dashboard views, my team views, and also productivity insight reports that we automatically create. Fewer items will be slipping through the cracks because of our due dates and our notification system. And prioritized action items will be completed on time with fewer follow-up emails. That is one of our biggest goals, kind of wrapping everything up with Priority Matrix. We want to provide visibility in one place, and we want to help people stay on task to get things done that really matter the most. So with all of this being said, I have a couple common questions loaded up here in case we don't have any that come up immediately, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Let's see. I'm going to first check the participant list. So if anybody has a question, feel free to use the little icon at the top of this meeting to raise your hand, and I'll actually go ahead and unmute you. I'm also going to check the conversation box. We have Pablo here, who looks like he's been doing a really great job actually answering questions for you guys during the duration of this webinar. So thank you, Pablo, for doing all of that. Let's see. So it looks like there was one question about the Gantt chart that Pablo was able to answer in the chat. There was a question about the Outlook integration. Again, thanks for answering that. So let's actually go over some of the common questions that we typically see. Again, don't be shy. Feel free to either drop those questions in or raise your hand. I'd love to talk to you guys. Let's see. So I'll go ahead and share this screen here. I'm not going to make it the full screen because I still want to be able to see if something comes up in our meeting over here on the right-hand side, but just to kind of jump in here. So we did look at how Priority Matrix can be used with those external collaborators. That's a really major question that we usually get, which is why I actually already covered it in the presentation. Another common question we get is, can you use Priority Matrix with several inboxes through Outlook? The answer is absolutely yes. Whatever your use case might be, whether you have a personal inbox and maybe a shared inbox, or maybe you have several different domains that you're working through, simply install the Outlook integration to each one of those inboxes. Then you're going to be able to get all of those emails into your one Priority Matrix account. So you're not limited to just using the integration through one inbox. One of our biggest questions is what training and support is included for our enterprise customers. So more of a company-wide or a site-wide deployment, we offer really hands-on training. We can actually set up custom webinars for you. We can do custom training videos, and we can actually do live team training sessions. For everybody else, we offer really in-depth YouTube tutorials. We offer email support. We have a support line that you can actually call. And we are also going to be hosting webinars. So in the month of January, I have a ton of webinars scheduled. You all are going to be getting emails about those. So definitely keep an eye out for them. They cover a bunch of different topics, and they're great resources to be aware of. In terms of actually getting started, we don't expect you to sign up for a license, jump in kind of full-fledged with, of course, without trying out the system. So we do offer a free 2-week trial period with unlimited access to the system. You're able to add your teammates and access all of our training videos and support at the same time. This is a wonderful way to actually get started, kind of get your feet wet and see if the system is going to work well for you. Lastly, licensing options. We offer a couple of different kind of tiers of pricing. I did briefly mention the enterprise solution, which is more of a company-wide or a site-wide deployment. We also offer what's called our Pro and Business license, starting at either $5 per user per month or closer to $9 per user per month. And then these are all going to be billed annually. So that's just kind of a quick breakdown of what our licensing options look like. Any specific questions about that, again, drop those in the chat box or raise your hand and we can actually talk about those. All right, it looks like we do have one question. Andres, I'm going to go ahead and let's see, show participant list. I'm going to unmute you. Just give me 1 minute here. So I allowed your microphone. Now, Andres, if you can actually go in and unmute your microphone on your side, you will be able to actually talk. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So I'm trying to grasp a bit of a how the software can help as, in my particular case, as a project manager for a construction company. So we have different ways of management in our for our specific projects. For instance, we have the scheduling of the whole duration of the project, and that's a particular management. And then we have the day-to-day tasks that we get through emails. Now, if I'm looking at the quadrants, you can name the quadrants whatever name. I'm just trying to grasp how would how would this software will be able to help integrate something like the entire project timeline from start to finish and the day-to-day emails that we get. Is that would that be the project, the time that will be on one quadrant, and on the day-to-day emails or daily tasks will be on a different quadrant, and would everybody chip in what they need to do as per their own lists? Or I'm not sure if my question makes sense.
It definitely makes sense. And it's actually a wonderful question. So thank you for asking that. And it really brings up the concept that most people are probably thinking, which is how is the best way to set this up for myself and for my team? Because it's such a flexible tool. It's you know, you can really set it up in such a wide variety of ways. From my experience, my advice would be you're likely going to have a couple of projects that probably fall under the same category. So in this case, you can see under these projects, I have project tags applied. So I'm actually going to do this really quickly. On the right-hand side, I'm going to filter for manager webinar. These are specific projects that I wanted to show you all today for this webinar, but the idea is you can create a couple projects that are kind of falling under the same category. So the reason I point that out right off the bat is because you could have a project where you simply list out, you know, the timeline that you're looking at.
Okay.
In this case, this is a good example where we can, you know, use this project for saying, hey, here's our tasks. Everybody's task can be in this project together because it will be shared with everybody and you can delegate it. This is, in this case, this would be saying, hey, here's our Gantt chart and here's the timeline of each task, like you kind of mentioned, listing things from start to finish. So this is a very detailed project with all of the start dates and due dates added. Whereas, hang on, one more thing I want to mention is then I might suggest you have a different project for top priority emails and kind of smaller action items that may just have a very quick turnaround. Maybe they're due tomorrow and they don't have such a built out kind of timeline in place for that project. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah, it does. I guess the other question will be, is there such thing as links integration between the main planner, I guess, if you will, and the daily tasks that we get on a day-to-day basis, or it's once the two projects will be its own separate thing?
Great question. So you can definitely link projects together. So like in this example, the dashboard project, this might not be exactly how you set it up, but this is a perfect example saying, hey, here's kind of our dashboard overseeing all of the similar projects that we're working on. And when I click on this, task here on the right-hand side, I actually have it linked to kind of the full-fledged project. So if I click on it, it takes me to that. So
Okay.
that's a great way to sum everything up and say, hey, here's the similar projects we're working on. Here's the timeline of them. And then here's each project listed out with everything we need to get done.
That makes sense. Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And I want to actually say we have a bunch of resources, templates, blog posts, different articles specifically for construction project management. So, Andres, I'll send that to you on a one-on-one email. Definitely explore that. And I hope that those are helpful resources for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Awesome. Let's see. Any other questions? Looks like Pablo's been doing a great job sending those questions through the chat box here. I don't see any other questions popping up right now. While I still have a couple of you here, I want to kind of mention, again, the upcoming webinars that we're hosting in January. Keep an eye out for those. And then right after this meeting ends, I'm going to be sending you all a recording of the meeting and also a quick survey. If you have just one extra minute, I personally would really appreciate that feedback, letting me know what you liked about the webinar, maybe what was a little confusing, and most importantly, what topics you would like to see covered next in our webinars. All right, so as predicted, I thought this webinar would probably take around 40 to 45 minutes. Looks like we're falling right in between that. So this is, a great time to kind of wrap this up. I'm all set for my end, unless we see any other questions coming up. But with that being said, I want to wish you all happy holidays. And anybody who's traveling, have safe travels. And I hope to see your feedback and, questions coming in about, kind of your personal use case. So thank you all so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.